name is Ilana Saltz. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Manhattan, in New York. Right now, I am teaching high school. I'm also a licensed attorney, but I lost that job earlier this year because of all the government funding contracts. I was a children's immigration attorney. Worked for Kind, which overleveraged itself on the specific contract. And so I think 90% of us lost our jobs, but it's okay. I ended up, I'm doing long-term subbing now. Next year, I'm working in a school for recent immigrants to the US. So same population. I like working with the kids and families. So it was disappointing to lose my job, but I was very lucky compared to a lot of people. So I decided to join If Not Now because I had been to the West Bank in July 28, 2016 on the Center for Jewish Nonviolence trip, which I had randomly found out about actually from a J Street alumni email, I guess back when they were still talking about Palestine in more of a way that agreed with my views. And I really hadn't been super involved with Palestinian rights movements before that, but I had the summer off in between my teaching job and starting law school. So I went to Palestine, I spent time there, and a lot of the people were involved with If Not Now. And I knew in Philadelphia there was an active chapter. I found out about the training that was going on. I was connected by, I think, someone probably who was in the rabbinical school who had been on the CJNB trip. So at some point, I just found out that the training was happening. And it was right when I was starting law school. I didn't really have a community organized with yet. So that was something I decided to pursue. There were some people in the Philadelphia area at certain points. I know Rabbi Sarah Brammerschley was someone who was very involved. So I met Sarah in the CJNB trip. And I can't remember exactly if that's who told me about the If Not Now training, but someone from CJNB definitely. And then there were some other people that I had actually known growing up in Long Island and doing USY and Ramah, who also had maybe changed their views on Zionism over the years and had joined If Not Now as well. So there were actually a few familiar faces, which was interesting to me. There were, I believe, one or two people that I had recognized from doing USY or Ramah. So I do see myself. So I am the one, I'm in the second row, very brassed out blonde dyed hair. So I'm the second person appearing in the image from the left in the second row. Someone named Jen was someone that I recognize, but I don't see
Right.
the picture.
Like Jen Wright is actually like
Oh,
right there. Yeah.
okay. Yes. Yes.
So you grew up together?
I knew them from, they were friends with my friend's sister. The rest of the people there were, I met all of them that day.
You recognize anyone?
Yeah, I definitely connected on Facebook and Instagram with some of them. So I can't remember everyone's names, but there are some people who probably still live in Philly, and then some people who are passing through for grad school, other things like that. I recognize Emmett because
Yeah.
that's the person that we're talking about. Jordan is next to Emmett, and Abby and Sarah and Adam are other people that I recognize who were at other events later on in Philly that I would see them.
Okay.
There were some people probably similar to me where we did the training and then on and off went to some event, but weren't always around in Philadelphia.
Do you have any like recollections from that day, from that training?
So I was trying to jog my memory about it. I do remember learning about the hive structure, and that was something that was interesting to me. I remember that we were in the Repair the World building. I knew that because my brother had done Repair the World in Baltimore, so I was familiar with Repair the World. And yeah, I think that's where If Not Now hosted a lot of their events in that Repair the World building. But Yeah, because it was my first month of law school, also a very busy time. And so I don't remember exactly what we did that day. I do remember learning about IPMA now, learning about the hive structure and meeting people that day. So my understanding of it was basically it's a way of decentralization. So unlike some other structures, and I've worked in the nonprofit world where there's even though it's a nonprofit, there's still sort of this corporate structure of the president or the CEO. Whereas I think the hive structure is more people gather with others where they live, and there's not a leader, there's not a formal leader. There are people who take leadership roles in terms of what portions of the training they get based on their experience. I think that there's benefits. Maybe there's also drawbacks because the way that I was used to things just from jobs is having a boss or having someone that this is the one person that you email to ask about something. And the decentralized structure allows everyone to take leadership, but it also sort of requires everyone to be active in that way. And so it's more of if I wanted to get involved in something, it was on me to step up and do so. I wasn't waiting for directions or to be voluntold to do something. So I know I knew from being still in the Facebook group what was going on. I wasn't super involved after maybe 2017, just because there were a lot of things I had to do with law school and I was back and forth between Philly and New York a lot. But yeah, I was able to follow along and I found myself very inspired by the way that people were able to step up in those moments. I think just getting to know people in general, I thought he would always speak up for what was right, not afraid to do so, and in a way that sometimes people self-censor because they think there's a right thing or a wrong thing to say. And I didn't get the impression that he felt the need to do that. It was more just speaking up when the time was right and knowing that people were there to support each other. I'm not as involved with it, not now anymore, but I still try to catch up with CJNB in my area when I can. I actually recently was trying to support our Palestinian friends who were coming into the United States, but unfortunately, despite having valid visas, they were not allowed to enter the country. And that was very disappointing, not unsurprising given what has happened. But that is something now that I'm teaching full time and I don't have legal conflicts or anything like that. That's something that I would like to do in the future as well. Try to provide guidance wherever possible. Immigration is complicated, and there's a lot of anti-Palestinian racism even before this administration, even before October 7th. And so this is different ways to get involved when I can, I think are very important. Seeing some of my childhood friends and the views that they are still expressing has been disappointing, but not surprising.
And there were a lot of like grandchildren of Shoah survivors around Emmett.
So my grandmother was born in Switzerland. Her parents were from Nazi Germany and they left in 1937. Yeah. I always find that interesting because my grandma did not consider herself a survivor. Her cousins who stayed behind died for the most part. And so I think for that reason, she and her family kind of assimilated pretty quickly as soon as they got to the US. And so she personally did not consider herself a survivor, but the ways that I think intergenerational trauma and other things of that nature come up, it's interesting to think about whether the person was directly there while the Shoah was happening or whether they had cousins who were there or were associated in some other way.
Emmett's grandmother also came to the United States in 1937.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Oh yeah, I do remember that meeting people. I don't know if I remember that Emmett was from the South, but I think I vaguely remember talking about that a little bit and the difference in experiences that I had growing up in an assimilated secular religious Jewish community where we went to synagogue every week, but I went to public school, and being Jewish was something that was I considered a very strong part of my family and who I was, but also because there were a lot of other people like that, and also a lot of secular non-religious people in my public school. It wasn't really a differentiating factor at the time. The fact that was differentiating was that my family kept kosher and kept Shabbat, actually.
Right.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about it in that way in some time, but I do recall, if not now, people would speak about that, and that may have been part of the training to get an idea of how people's backgrounds affected how they perceived things that were going on and how they perceived their role in organizing and in activism. But I learned a lot more about disability rights just probably from Emet's presence and hearing about it from other people. That was something that a lot of people wouldn't necessarily think about unless someone taught them. I think something that I learned is that growing up, as a non-disabled person, you're taught not to treat people as their disability, which of course people are people, but understanding that disability has an impact on people's lives and is a part of them the same way someone's religion or sexuality or gender is a part of who they are and is a very important part of who they are, and shouldn't be ignored in sort of this way. When we grow up, our parents sometimes try to teach us to be colorblind and things along that line, to include everyone and to make everyone feel they're typical, but everyone has differences, and knowing how to be inclusive requires an understanding that people have differences. So I left teaching before I got involved in activism, and now the sub role, but next year will be the first year that I'm teaching English language learners with a different sort of framework and perspective. And I hope that it will make me a better teacher. It's something that when I was 21, 22 and teaching, there were so many things going on that there were probably times that I didn't stop to think about each individual student and what made them who they were, things that are not quote unquote politically correct to think about, but are things that impact children and families. When doing immigration law, I would see in the shelters along the way up Mexico, there are many people with disabilities from their migration journey. So this is something that will impact probably more people now than when I first started teaching, because the journeys from Central America have gotten more common. People are taking dangerous journeys and having lifelong disabilities from that journey. So it's not necessarily something that they were born with, but something that they will learn to live with over time. And so I hope that as a teacher, that's something that I can really consider and use it to understand a student and maybe their families as individuals. My thought is that Emmett would probably speak up when Jewish communities are not being inclusive, and this is something that happens more often than we'd like it to, probably because it's something that people are not thinking about. It's something that I will be thinking about, and so definitely thank you for inviting me to participate.